Friends, good morning. I want to welcome you to our ongoing pursuit of God's wisdom through the book of Proverbs here at Downsview Baptist Church. We have decided to take the month of January to walk through this book of God's wisdom, seeking prudence in terms of how God would have us to live. We're doing that here in the 5th chapter today on January the 5th, and the writer, Solomon, writing to his son, to his children, as best we understand it, is not pulling any punches about the reality of the horrendous dangers of sexual immorality and of marital unfaithfulness, whether that's to his children who are currently married or may very well be married in the future. And so, because he's not afraid to say this straight up, we just want to trust God in his word today and to read through a passage and certainly an issue that has devastated so much of our society, and the kind of warning that we all need to hear, either married or unmarried, whether that is going to be married or even previously married. And so listen to Solomon's words here in chapter 5 of the book of Proverbs, where he addresses him, "My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood and sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps follow the path to Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. And now, O sons, listen to me, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless, lest strangers take their fill of your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. And at the end of your life you groan, when your flesh and your body are consumed. And you say, how I hated discipline, how my heart despised reproof." Verse 13 says, "I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation." Verse 15, he says, "Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of waters in the street, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman, and embrace of the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline. Because of his great folly, he's led astray." One of the tremendous challenges that all of us face and come face to face with these days is this just epidemic problem of marital unfaithfulness, and frankly the casualness with which in many ways the church handles the whole institution of this beautiful union between husband and wife of marriage. An institution, a mandate that the Lord has given his people since the earliest chapters of the Bible, that he made man and woman in his own image, and he made woman perfectly suited for the man, which meant the man was perfectly suited for the woman. God created them beautifully fit for one another. He told them to be fruitful and to multiply. He tells us in the book of Ephesians that this marriage relationship is intended as a picture of the union and communion of Christ and his church, that the role that men are to display is the role of Jesus, and the role that the wives are to display is the role of the church. And because Jesus has a certain role to play in this relationship, men are to play that role. And because the church has a certain role to play, then women, the wives, are to play a certain role. And it's almost an insult to so many, not just in the world, but even within our walls, in our church, to talk about the ideas of various roles, that people are equal but not the same, that equity is not the same as equality, that we're not uniform in order to be united. It's almost insulting for people to think of that these days. And this is a great time early in our year, especially those of us who've been blessed with spouses, to renew our commitment to living out our marriages in a way that displays Christ's perfect love for his church. We need the wisdom of God in these areas, and we need to be reminded of it. Most of you listening to a video like this are going to say, yeah, I know, I'm faithful to my spouse, I've not committed adultery, this is not something that's a problem for me, therefore I don't need to really listen. Pam and I have been married for 29 plus years, and God, by his grace, has kept us pure and faithful to each other. But that doesn't mean that God hasn't used means of grace to keep us faithful. And part of those means of grace is an ongoing understanding and reminding ourselves of the purpose of marriage and of the way that the scriptures enable us to stay pure and faithful to each other to the glory of God. And you notice as Solomon writes to his child, to his son, he's speaking about not forgetting the things that he's already told him. And don't depart, verse 7, don't listen to me, do not depart from the words of my mouth. And he doesn't use words that are, be careful when you're around situations that are going to tempt you. Be careful. He doesn't say that. He listen to a word, keep your way far from her. Do not go near, right? He's saying, like, just you need to just back off, stay away, keep your distance. One of the lessons that we've taught over the years in the wonderful times that Pam and I have had in marriage prep, marriage counseling, marriage crisis difficulties with folks, just teaching on marriage, is the illustration of Joseph. When Joseph was tempted to give himself to the wife of the head of Pharaoh's guards, Potiphar, over whose household Joseph had been set as a steward and manager. And as Potiphar's wife throws herself at him again and again, at one point she seems to grab onto his jacket, and you can just picture him pulling away and letting his arms go, and the jacket just falling off. And one of the things we said is, brothers, sisters, there's time, just leave your jacket and run. Just get far, get away from these situations. Don't find all kinds of unique ways and reasons that we can stick close to temptation. There are times that we must take radical efforts, as Solomon says here. Just keep your way far from her. Don't go near. Notice what he says here, that one of the great ways to keep from giving in to temptation is to enjoy the goodness that God has given us within our marriages already. Where we drink deeply from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well, right? Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. He's saying, love your wife, love your husband, enjoy your relationship, enjoy your sexual relationship. That's a gift of God within your marriage. We need to encourage young people to do this. We need to encourage folks who've been at marriage for quite some time to do this, to see that a great way to not be tempted over there is to enjoy what we have right here, and to realize that this incredible gift of marriage is that God has not given us perfect spouses, but he's given us the perfect ones for us. And that's part of the wisdom that God simply gives us in these passages, because you notice that he will say, don't come to the end of your life and say, how I hated discipline. Verse 12, how my heart despised reproof. I didn't listen to the voice of my teachers. I didn't incline my ear to my instructors. I'm at the brink of ruin in the assembled congregation. There's a congregational responsibility, brothers and sisters, at Downsview Baptist Church, that we seek the purity and the joy and the covenant faithfulness of the people of God in this church, in our marriage relationships, in our family relationships, so that the relationship that Christ has with his church would be on display amongst us as God's people here. Friends, ponder this. Pray for this. Whether you're married yet or no longer, for whatever reason that is, pray for the married couples and families within our church. Pray for those that are going to be married one day, the young people that we have in our church, the young little children that we have in our church. Think of them. Think of how we can model covenant faithfulness even to one another in the fellowships and friendships that we have within our church, that is to model the kind of steadfast, reliable faithfulness, a sense of contentment with each other, to the glory of our King, that God's wisdom, especially when it comes to the purity in this area, would be modeled and would be seen to be modeled amongst our church. Thanks for this today, dear friends. Pray that you'll continue to walk through us throughout the month of January. One chapter of Proverbs a day for the 31 days in January. Cheers.